be fair, it's worse for women. I mean, you guys, you know,
I think it's worse for
it,
men.
no, I don't. I think that men have more leeway. Yeah, we have to be strong, stuff like that. But if we take a day off, or if we, especially in a job environment, I think that men men are very, very, have an advantage. And women, you guys, uh, if you take a day off, we're thinking, what, she getting her hair done, or she getting, and it could be a legitimate excuse. A man take a day off, oh, he must be sick. He must really can't get to the office, and we may be on the golf course. So I think that women, it is more difficult, for sure, in a environment, in the work environment.
I
I
think men
agree.
have a harder time because women, if we take the day off, if we take a mental health day, we know why we're taking the time off. We're feeling our feelings. We're talking to our support systems. We're doing the things that we need to do. Men are not in touch with their feelings. They have them. They have them all over the place.
No, we
I
don't.
see it in my work. I'm sorry. What? Look at you in your
No, we
feelings
don't.
right. So
No,
you
I'm
have
sorry. Go ahead.
feelings about not having feelings. Look at you. It's wild. And I think men really struggle with not knowing how to identify and process the emotions that they're going through. And if you even having friends and people in your life that you can talk to, men don't have that. No new friends.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why men die earlier. I think that what's the men dies, what, 7, I think I read, 7 years earlier than on average than
Something like
women.
that.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
think it's because of that. We don't know how to deal with stress. We don't have that support group, necessarily. I remember when, I have no kids, but I kept my niece and nephew when my sister got sick, and so for Thursday, I was a bachelor.
Mhm.
Friday, I had 2 kids, okay?
Yep.
And I knew nothing. I had no support system. I didn't I remember my niece and nephew said, "Well, just go to the pick line." What's a pick line? I knew none of the terminology. They said that they were staying for SSI, and I was like, "Oh, that's great. You have extra study." I didn't know it was detention. I had no idea. I'm like, because I've never failed anything. I'm like, wow, that's good that you saying extra and you're gonna get. No, you've been bad. I didn't know anything about that, and so instead of praise, I should be whooping. You know, but it's we don't have that support system unless you've been through it, and you guys kind of like cobble together. And girlfriend, you want to go out? I got you, and you got get me, and then we're gonna get through this together. And I think that's you know we need that, for men. We need that. I know that, one of the church I go to, there was a men's group, and I found myself, and it's one of the few times that men can go there, and we don't have to be men. You're not worried about who's the alpha in the room and who, whatever. We just go there and talk. And I found that there was a lot of commonality about some of the things we've gone through, and I really enjoyed that.
Mhm.
And the whatever reason, the church stopped that, and I feel some kind of way about that,
Well,
because that was one of the few outlets where you can go and really, it's a safe space, and you can really talk about stuff that bothers you, that you can't necessarily talk to anyone else about.
mhm.
So we should have more of that, right?
We should have more.
Yes.
We should join the women's group, come in there and no.
No. Needs to be separate. And this is where, men have to do the work. I speak to men all the time and they say the same thing. You know what? It's easier for you all because you're in touch with your emotions and your feelings. Okay. So at the point that you recognize that you're not as in touch with your emotions as you should be or want to be, what's your next step? Because most often, in my experience, the next step is to blame a woman, is to blame my mom, my wife. I don't have time. The onus is on the man, especially if, I mean, there's been enough conversation about mental health in the last 3 years for men to start prioritizing their emotional and psychological well-being, whether it is an impromptu conversation in the barbershop or it's formalized with a coach or with a therapist. Those things have to happen. And especially after you've experienced any significant life event, life change, whether it is having, from bachelor to 2 kids, the death of a loved one, losing a career, whatever the life change is, I tell people run to therapy, because you don't know in that moment how the event has impacted you. And that's not just for, millionaire divorces. They can afford to live with a therapist. That's for us that have to go to work tomorrow, that have to be on air tomorrow, that have to show up for the closing tomorrow, that have to be in court tomorrow. We are the ones who often are significantly impacted when we neglect our mental health.
And that therapy was so important for me. I sought therapy until I found the right person too.
Oh, yeah.
Because so often we go to our friends and they're like, oh, Lord, Kathy's calling again. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Whereas you can go to the therapist and they are not judgmental. I even went to a husband and wife therapist. First, I went to the wife first. And then I realized I really need to talk to your husband. And she wasn't offended at all. I needed the perspective of a male. So it's okay to go to our girlfriends or our guy friends and have those conversations. But at the end of the day, it really has to be someone who's may tell us some things that we don't want to hear, but we need to hear, because that is their area of expertise. And it was very enlightening for me, because I think David mentioned the effect on your childhood and how you enter into relationships, whether it's professional or personal. Certainly your childhood is a factor there. And so when you see a professional who can tie all those things together, the lightning strike is powerful and it's beautiful. And at the end of the day, you lead a healthier life, just like you go to your physician when you are physically ill. Going to someone who understands the mental challenges is just as important.
It seems
So
to
hearing
me
that male perspective and that female perspective, there is a time when we need to hear from a male and respect their point of view.